Most billionaires lose money. Malcolm Reed almost lost something far more valuable. And it happened because he ignored one poor black boy standing on the wrong side of a fence. At 62 years old, Malcolm Reed believed he had mastered life. He believed in leverage, acquisition, market dominance, and quarterly returns. He believed in numbers because numbers never embarrassed you. Numbers never reminded you of where you came from. But small voices did dot, and Malcolm had trained himself not to hear them. He had not always been powerful. He was born in a narrow apartment on the west side of Atlanta, where the paint peeled from the walls and the summer heat pressed against the windows. Like a second landlord, his mother cleaned office buildings at night. She left when it was dark and came back when it was light, moving quietly so she would not wake him. He used to pretend to be asleep. He remembered overdue notices folded carefully on the kitchen counter. He remembered sharing sneakers with his cousin. He remembered pretending not to care when classmates laughed. And he remembered Maplewood Park. The basketball court was cracked. The rims were slightly bent. The lines had faded into memory. But it was theirs. It was where older boys taught younger boys how to stand tall. It was where arguments ended in jump shots instead of sirens. It was where Malcolm first believed that maybe, just maybe, he could rise beyond his circumstances. At 13 years old, standing on that concrete, he made a promise. One day he would rise so high no one would ever make him feel small again. He kept that promise. By 40, Malcolm owned properties across the Southeast. By 50, he was a billionaire developer praised for revitalizing neglected neighborhoods. By 62, he was considered untouchable. No one questioned his vision until one afternoon, on a humid July day, Malcolm stood in front of reporters at the edge of Maplewood Park. Except it was no longer a park. The grass had been torn out. Trees were marked for removal. Construction fencing sliced through the neighborhood. Bulldozers rested like metal animals waiting to be fed. Behind Malcolm stood executives and city officials. Cameras flashed as he spoke about revitalization, opportunity, and economic transformation. This development, he said confidently, will reshape this community for generations. Applause followed, but not from everyone. Across the fencing stood a group of neighborhood kids watching in silence. Among them was 12-year-old Isaiah Carter. Isaiah was thin, with observant eyes and sneakers worn nearly flat. Maplewood Park was not outdated to him. It was where his older brother taught him to dribble before leaving for the military. It was where his grandmother sat humming gospel songs every afternoon. It was the only place that felt safe after dark. As Malcolm finished speaking and turned toward his vehicle, Isaiah ducked under the caution tape. "Sir," security stiffened. Malcolm turned. "Yes?" Isaiah swallowed but held eye contact. "Please don't tear it down." There was a murmur. "The project has already been approved," Malcolm replied. "You don't have to tear all of it down." Isaiah said, "My uncle fixes things. We could repair the courts. We could clean it up. We just need supplies. We can help." Executives shifted uncomfortably. Malcolm saw worn shoes and hopeful eyes. He did not see influence. "We're building something better," Malcolm said. Better for who? Isaiah asked. The question lingered. For everyone, Malcolm answered. Progress requires change. Isaiah's voice softened but did not break. It was already ours. For a brief second, Malcolm felt something old and uncomfortable move inside his chest. Then he turned and walked away. That was the moment everything began to unravel. A local journalist had filmed the entire exchange. Within hours, the video spread across social media. The headline was simple. Billionaire dismisses poor black boy pleading to save community park. The internet did not replay Malcolm's scholarships or donations. It replayed the dismissal. It replayed the sentence, progress requires change. Investors began calling. City officials demanded meetings. Protests formed outside corporate headquarters. One major partner withdrew from a $200 million project. But the financial pressure was not what kept Malcolm awake that night. It was the mirror. In his penthouse overlooking the skyline, Malcolm replayed the video over and over. This time, he focused on Isaiah's eyes, steady, unafraid, disappointed. Then he heard the words again. It was already ours, and suddenly, he saw something he had not seen before in himself. At 13, he stood on cracked concrete, praying someone powerful would care enough to listen. Malcolm walked into a storage room and opened a box he had not touched in years. Inside were pictures. A younger Malcolm on that same basketball court. His mother sitting on the rusted bench after her night shift. He sat down slowly. He had not just ignored a boy. He had erased his own memory. The next morning, Malcolm did something no one expected. He cancelled every meeting. No cameras, no executives. He returned to Maplewood Park alone. The bulldozers were silent. Protest signs leaned against the fence. Isaiah sat on the remaining stretch of concrete, bouncing a worn basketball. Malcolm stepped over the caution tape. Isaiah stood, cautious but steady. I handled that wrong, Malcolm said. Isaiah did not respond immediately. I forgot what this place meant. You forgot because you don't come back, Isaiah said. The truth landed harder than the headlines. You're right, Malcolm replied. There was a long silence. My brother leaves for basic training next month, Isaiah said. This was our spot. Malcolm nodded slowly. My mother used to sit right there after her night shifts. Isaiah studied him carefully. You remember every detail. And in that moment, Malcolm understood the real cost of success. It was not money. It was memory. That afternoon, Malcolm made a decision that shocked his entire board. He redesigned the development plan. The luxury complex would still rise, but Maplewood Park would remain, not just preserved, restored, expanded, and protected. A new professional court was built. Bright lighting replaced darkness. A technology and robotics center opened. Scholarships were established. For neighborhood students, a community advisory board was formed, led by residents. Isaiah's uncle was hired as a contractor. Local workers were prioritized. But the most dramatic transformation happened in Malcolm. He began spending Saturdays at the park without announcement. He mentored students. He admitted his failures. He listened. He no longer saw small voices as interruptions. He saw them as reminders. Months later, at the reopening ceremony, Malcolm stood without a script. "I thought success meant leaving this place behind," he said. "I thought power meant never looking back. I was wrong. The most expensive mistake a person can make is forgetting who they used to be." The applause was not polite. It was real. Over time, investors returned. Partnerships were rebuilt. But Malcolm no longer cared about being untouchable. He cared about being accountable. Years later, Isaiah graduated at the top of his class with a full scholarship in engineering. Malcolm sat in the front row. As Isaiah crossed the stage, their eyes met, and Malcolm felt tears he did not hide. He had not saved Isaiah. Isaiah had saved him. Ignoring that boy had nearly cost him his reputation, his influence, and his integrity. But listening restored something wealth could never purchase: his humanity. And sometimes, the most expensive thing a billionaire can lose is not money. It is the child he once was. * for my contents. Like and subscribe.